College football playoffs are just days away as the defending national champions from Clemson will battle Alabama in the second semifinal on Monday night. We'll break down the game with key matchups, injury updates, and more, as well as a special Outback Bowl preview as we go one-on-one with Phil Kornblut, covering South Carolina sports talk for 33 years on the Sports Talk Radio Network at sportstalksc.com on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's December 29, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we talk Clemson Tigers football here with Phil Kornblut. Phil, thanks for taking the time to talk to us again.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy New Year to you.
Yes, Happy New Year to you too, and all the Clemson fans out there listening, because I'm sure it's going to be a hell of a New Year's Day taking on Alabama, the third game of three. I guess this is, of course, going to decide. This is the clincher of the three. I kind of get a kick out of some of the talk I'm hearing from Alabama about, revenge and all that. I mean, look, when you've split 1-1 national championships, there is no revenge. This is the tiebreaker. You can throw in all that kind of psychological, boo babble all you want, but that's not going to work. Both teams have beaten each other for a national championship, and this is even. This is going to decide it all.
Absolutely. This will decide who the likely king is in college football. Of course, there's still one more game to go, and anything can happen in Atlanta for either one of these teams that advances. But in terms of the current rivalry between Clemson and Alabama, this will settle the issue for now, unless they meet again next year. Who knows? I mean, either one of these teams is going away. The loser is not going to fade to black by any means, because they got great players coming in, and coaching staffs will be back for the most part. I know Alabama's got to replace the defensive coordinator and deal with all that kind of stuff. But Clemson is very solid with their coaching staff. Nobody's departing, and got a great recruiting class coming in. So win or lose, Clemson will be right back in the hunt next year in 2018.
Yeah, and I think, of course, what we've seen from the recruiting cycle, it sure looks like Clemson is beefing up again. It's amazing how many top guys on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, really, with the design of going out and getting all these top defensive players around the country. It makes sense. I mean, that's how Alabama became so dominant under Nick Saban. And why not build your program the same way? And that's really what Clemson's done. And of course, if you can add a special quarterback like Deshaun Watson every couple of years, then all of a sudden you've got yourself a national championship team.
But you know what? You don't need a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. We'll see. I mean, Kelly Bryant is no Deshaun Watson from the standpoint of the recruiting world, even though he was a highly regarded quarterback in the state of South Carolina as a high school senior, but more as an athlete, more as a runner. And they've made him into a very efficient, if not terrific passer. I mean, he's completing 67% of his attempts, but he is so dangerous as a runner as well. You cannot just bone up on them against the pass and think you can stop him, because if you turn your back on him in coverage, he's going to take off and run. He's such a tremendous athlete and so fast that he will he's like Hurts, except he's a much better passer than Hurts, and he's a bigger guy than Hurts. He can hurt you with his legs as well. My point is, he was not one of those five-star gems coming out of high school, and now he's got his team on the cusp of playing for a national championship again. But he is surrounded by, most importantly for them, a veteran offensive line and plenty of good skill position people, and a defense that is really second to none in the country at this point.
Now, what do you think about what you've seen from him and being in a position where Hurts does have the edge, being in the spotlight, playing in a championship game? So he's been in that situation before. Bryant has not as a starting quarterback. So do you think it's something that, like, again, every kid is going to normally you're going to get the jitters early. They all do. So the just question is how quickly do the jitters go away and he relaxes? What do you think? Because that's probably in my mind, I think that's Alabama's best shot to beat Clemson is if they can get off to a good start. Bryant a little uneasy, and maybe it becomes a defensive battle. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but that's their best shot.
Well, I'll tell you, Bryant was so nervous in the ACC championship game, he completed his first 15 passes. So, I mean, he stepped right in on that big stage and played extremely well. He has exceeded expectations in every category. He's a mature guy. You know, he's an older guy. He waited his time and paid the price
Mm-hmm.
as a backup to be in this position, learning the offense, being tutored under Brandon Streeter, the quarterback's coach, and under Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott, the co-offensive coordinator. So even though he had not logged any major playing time or had any significant snaps in his career prior to this year, he was well schooled in what Clemson likes to do. And of course, they tailored some things to fit his skills. They don't really take the shots down the field as much as they used to with Deshaun Watson. Their passing game is a little bit tighter, a little bit more side to side than vertical, but he can go deep when he needs to. But again, the thing you have to remember is that he is just as dangerous with his legs, and he is, I believe, not having the stats right in front of me, I believe he's the second leading rusher on the team, and he is second on the team in rushing touchdowns. I mean, this is including the running back. So he can hurt you both with the arm and the legs, and that's something that Alabama's going to have to, take into consideration as it finalizes its game plan.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm interested in seeing in the determination of whether or not I believe that Clemson should be the favorite if they beat Alabama and get to the championship game in that game is how well Bryant does play, because he is going to go up against the best or the second best defense that he's played all season. And the first one was Auburn. Now that's kind of tough because it's early in his career as a starter. But that was also a game where it was a defensive battle. And so it's kind of an unknown, the big game, the media attention on the game, the millions of people watching, the spotlight on you, and then throw in one of the toughest defenses that he's ever faced. And then we're going to find out exactly what kind, because the last two games, as we talked about a few weeks ago, that these two programs played, completely different, even though both teams still had good defenses, they were high scoring games. And I'm not so sure that's what we're going to see. That's definitely not what Alabama wants to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain. I mean, you just have to tip your hat and give credit to the offenses the last 2 years, because those are two great defenses. Look at the defensive players who are in the NFL from those two teams.
Sure.
So it's just a credit to the offensive personnel and the game planning on both sides that they ran up and down the field on each other, and it just came down in both cases to possessions at the very end of the game, and of course turnovers were important in both situations. Alabama's mistake last year was giving Deshaun Watson 2 minutes on the clock, and their defense wasn't able to rise up and stop him. And of course, the great understory here is the fact that you have a totally unknown walk-on receiver in Hunter Renfrow who has caught 4 touchdown passes against that great Alabama secondary in those two games. They're going to have Minkah Fitzpatrick or somebody eyeballing him, number 13, everywhere he goes, because they're sick of that guy catching passes against him, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
Clemson finds a way. They find a way to get him the ball. In fact, you'll see, especially in on ball possession downs, third and move the chain, that kind of stuff. That is the security blanket for Bryant. That's who he likes to go to. And more often than not, those little short patterns, Renfrow finds a way to get himself open. So I don't know. Again, you got offenses that can do great things. You got terrific defenses on both sides. It's hard to predict with the way the offenses are today. I mean, I still think we're going to have a game where the ball goes up and down the field on both sides. And whichever defense can come up with a stop or two is probably going to provide the difference in the game for that side.
As far as the injuries, now this is also part of the reason why I feel pretty good about Clemson in this game, because I think Alabama was going to have a hard enough time beating Clemson with a healthy team. And with the injuries that they have going into this game, it's definitely an edge for Clemson, because Alabama, Hamilton's the big loss, no question. And that is a major loss at their linebacker situation. And then they bring in this freshman Dylan Moses, who has a couple of good games, and he gets hurt. Hootie Jones is out in the secondary. Clemson doesn't really have any of those injuries, do they?
They really don't. They are as healthy now as they have been all season long. They've had a couple of defensive backs, Marcus Edmond and Mark Fields, who would be starters back earlier in the year, who've missed a lot of time with injuries. They're now healthy, so they'll be back ready to go. There is nobody that you would put in the category of the walking wounded. In other words, guys who had not been declared out for the season, who should not be able to play for them on Monday night. That's on offense and defense. Now, one significant injury for them, and this is something that could become a factor, is their place kicker. They lost their place kicker to a knee injury late in the season, and their replacement has been a little bit shaky. And so, I think that you put him in a pressure situation of a national semifinal game. With the game on the line, you might see Dabo Swinney doing some things he ordinarily would not do if he had his regular kicker, simply because the pressure and the trust factor on this kicker might not be there. So I don't know. That could become an important aspect of the game as well.
Who is if you had to pick a player that will end up as the defensive player of the game for Clemson, who would it be?
Probably, you could think of a Christian Wilkins. You could think of a Dexter Lawrence, those guys right in the middle, tying up those offensive linemen. But in terms of stats, when you think about it, probably a guy like either Dorian O'Daniel, who is their leading tackler at linebacker and makes a lot of plays along the line of scrimmage and in the secondary. He would be one. Cleveland Farrell, one of the defensive ends, leads the team in tackles for loss and sacks. He could be another, though. Sacking Hurst, I understand, is not an easy thing to do because he's so fast and mobile. So maybe sacking him might not be a thing. But if I would maybe pin down one guy, it would be Dorian O'Daniel, who's so good both in terms of his play along the line and also dropping back in coverage.
Okay, interesting, because obviously all the pro talent is up front. But you think that, again, you're taking a look at a defense that, especially up front with all the talent that they have, and I know Alabama's got some issues in the offensive line. That's the thing. That's why I think if Clemson, that's to me, that's got to be an advantage for Clemson in this game, because sure, Alabama's got a good defense, we know that, but I don't see them dominating or even being close to being able to dominate the line of scrimmage on their end. With the solid line play Clemson has, including Mitch Hyatt, a very good prospect, NFL prospect at tackle. But Alabama's dealing with some offensive line issues, and it just wouldn't surprise me to see Clemson dominate the line of scrimmage. It wouldn't.
No, you shouldn't be, because they're good up front, and they've got 7, 8 guys they roll in and out there on the offensive line, so they can wear you down with long time consuming drives. So I would not be surprised if Clemson more than holds its own. If not, it's hard to say the word dominate and then Alabama in the same phrase, because you just don't hear that. So I'm not going to say dominate, but at least win the battle up front and give Travis Etienne in particular. He's emerged as their real lightning back, the freshman from New Orleans, who obviously is going to be very excited to be there and a chance to play on the big stage. This kid, you're going to love him in a couple of more years. I mean, people love him now. He has got an extra gear. He hits the line. If there's a gap, he is through there like in a bolt. So I think Clemson's running game will be able to do some things against Alabama with their offensive line having some success.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn did a great job on their defense against Alabama's offensive line and controlling the line of scrimmage, and Alabama just did not have a lot of opportunities offensively. It didn't have any major drives that really, again, it just was one of those games that you just kind of felt that Auburn was control most of the game, even though it was pretty close up until late. And Clemson's just better. Clemson, as good as Alabama's defensive front is, Clemson's just better. And so that's another reason I really like Clemson in this matchup. I think it's going to take, because of the injuries, because of the way Clemson, I think, can take over their defensive line against Alabama's offensive front. And if Alabama can't run the football, and we know that they're not a passing team, this is the problem. I think I just don't think this is a very good matchup for Alabama.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to pick Clemson to win this thing. However, where you have to be careful, whether you are a media or prognosticator or a fan, is when you start selling Alabama short, that's when they find a way to beat you. And you also have to keep in mind that unlike the previous 2 years when both teams had to prepare on short weeks, they've had a full month to get ready for each other now. So,
sure.
I mean, that's good for both sides. Clemson's had a full month, but, everybody paying their due respect to Saban and his wisdom and his creativity. I think the thing that's being whispered and one thing that's not being said too much aloud is how much is Saban going to impact this game by having a full month to get ready and a full month to get his defense set up and aligned the way he knows to do it to offset an offense like Clemson. That's kind of the unsaid thing here. So I still don't think, Clemson is even though Vegas has Alabama as the small favorite.
They do.
The common talk seems to be favoring Clemson. But you still can't rest easy if you're Clemson. You can't be too comfortable because Alabama's still Alabama, and they still have great players. They have lost some players, no doubt. They've gotten some back. Christian Miller is back, for example. He'll be ready to play. I think they've gotten a couple of linebackers healthy and ready to go too. So they lost a couple of really good players, as you pointed out, but they're not completely decimated, nor are they without talent back there either.
No, I think the respect factor, though. See, I can, and it's definitely not about a lack of respect. It's just about trying for me to be honest, going over and analyzing this game, and even though I feel confident about Clemson winning the game and the reasons why, I am letting Vegas and the odds set the record straight. That, hey, Alabama's the favorite in this game. Alabama is not only the favorite in this game, Alabama's the favorite to win the national championship as far as the futures are concerned. So, and to me, that, yeah, I agree with you. I think there are a lot of people that do kind of like Clemson, but you know what? Not enough that Alabama is still not the favorite. And therefore, I think there are enough people that are respecting Alabama. I just think they're wrong. And I think we're going to see Clemson beat them.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm in that same boat with you. I'm looking at a Clemson win as well. I have felt so from the beginning. Of course, I am influenced by the fact that I see Clemson so much, and I know them pretty well, much more than I see Alabama or know Alabama. So I'm obviously influenced, just as anybody who covers Alabama on a regular basis is going to be influenced by what they see. They're going to believe that, man, this is the best team that I've seen, and nobody can beat them. But Clemson is a loaded football team. They know how to handle their business in these situations. They go about it the right way. So I'm with you. I would think Clemson's going to win this thing and move on to, I think, play Georgia. The news out of the Rose Bowl with Baker Mayfield being sick and all that can't help Oklahoma's chances. We may be looking at a Clemson-Georgia national championship game, which in this part of the world would just be unbelievable.
Yeah, if that's the case. I mean, I like Georgia before the Mayfield situation. I'm not sure if that's going to – I mean, look, he's got a lot of time to get healthy. And psychologically, you don't also know how that's going to play.
He's got the flu. He's got that flu that's been going around. He's got time, but that's a draining illness.
Sure.
It can leave you obviously very weak and moving. You kind of feel like you're moving in slow motion. But I'm sure they got some magic liquids they can give him to get him as much up to speed as possible.
But again, I like Georgia anyway, and I don't know. Again, I'm actually, again, that's the reason why I said I want to see how Bryant plays against Alabama, because that could change my mind. I do like Georgia to win the national championship, but what could change my mind is if Bryant comes out as a really good game against that Alabama defense. Even though I think Georgia's got a better defense because of the Alabama injuries, still, if he proves on the in the big spotlight in the biggest game of his career against a really good defense and plays really well, then I might have a different opinion next week. But that's for next week. And we'll get through this game first, and then have an opportunity to talk to you again before they play in the national championship game. And then as far as the game that you're covering at the Outback Bowl, so you're there in Tampa, and South Carolina, another team that you cover, taking on Michigan, my favorite team.
Yeah.
So this is a good situation for Will Muschamp in his second season to try to get his first bowl win with the Gamecocks. And they've had, of course, some key injuries this year, including, of course, Deebo Samuel, which was the huge injury. I mean, this is a team that's won a lot of games. I don't think people realize how many games South Carolina's won, and they did it without their most electrifying offensive player. So I think Muschamp's actually done a really good job there.
Well, he has. He should be recognized for that. Losing Deebo Samuel in the fourth game of the season, a guy who got off to such a great start, that really hurt their offense, no doubt about it. And then they've just had an uncanny run of lower leg injuries. Deebo Samuel, Rico Gattle, A.J. Turner, Casey Crosby, all guys on the offensive side who at one time or another, big playmakers for them. They all went down with lower leg injuries. Crosby's gotten healthy. A.J. Turner's gotten healthy. Gattle, the running back, is out most likely. He did not practice today. He was in yellow and not in full pad, not practicing. The big concern for South Carolina coming out of today's practice is two of their starting offensive linemen were in yellow today and had braces on their knees, and starting tackle and starting guard, Bailey and Stanley.
Okay.
And, that would be against that very good, strong, talented Michigan offensive line. They need all healthy hands on deck, and they got to get those two guys ready to go by Monday.
Yeah, with Michigan, their strength, really both teams' strength is on the defensive side of the ball. So you would think that we're going to see that type of a game, but you never know in these bowl games. And Michigan, of course, with Peters, a young quarterback, this is a big opportunity for him because, we have no idea what's going to happen with the quarterback situation next year yet. We're still waiting. Everybody's waiting on whether or not Mississippi transfer quarterback Shea Patterson is going to be able to play next year. And of course, McCaffrey, who they really love, is also going to get a chance to win the job next year. So big opportunity for Peters to try to get a leg up in the competition for next year. But they're a young offense and even a young defense, but a little bit more talent ahead on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan. So I would think we're going to see a pretty low scoring game, but we'll probably also see a very physical game.
You're right. Most people seem to think this is going to be a game played maybe in the teens. Whoever can get to 20 might be the winner. Michigan's defense, as you noted, one of the best in the country. I think they're ranked like number 3 overall in total defense, something like that. Big and strong up front, very athletic up front. And South Carolina's offensive line has had its issues this year against the really good defenses like Clemson, which stoned them. Like Georgia, which I think they were held to 10 points against Georgia, so couldn't get much done there.
That's some schedule, huh? I mean, they've only lost 2 games since September, and those are 2 teams playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right. And look, they've only had. What's funny? It's not funny to Gamecock fans, but you look at South Carolina's 2 years under Muschamp to this point, and they've only been blown out. I'm talking about blown out. No chance to win by the fourth quarter in 2 games of his 2 losses that he has had as his coach at South Carolina. He had 7 losses in his first year and 4 losses this year. So it was 11 losses. 9 of those, they were into the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 that I'm talking about were Clemson.
Yeah.
He got killed by Clemson last year and killed by Clemson this year. And
yeah.
It's obvious that Clemson is above them right now. They're trying to catch up, but they're also in their head a little bit too. I mean, Clemson comes into that game now with all the confidence in the world, and South Carolina's like, we kind of hope we can win, and Clemson goes in now expecting to win.
Sure.
So that's something South Carolina has to change, but only by getting, better and better, because Clemson's not backing up. They're going to have to step it up, and that's what they're trying to do through their recruiting. So, Muschamp's done a heck of a job and has made them very competitive. I expect this to be a low-scoring, close fourth quarter competitive game. And if South Carolina can muster something on offense and, get in the red zone and score touchdowns and not settle for field goals, in my mind, as an 8-point underdog, I think they'll win this game. You mentioned Brandon Peters, the Michigan quarterback. I know he's a good-looking kid at 6'5", got a nice arm and all that, but he's only played in 5 games in his career. He's only thrown 64 passes this year.
Sure.
So that should be to South Carolina's advantage. I would think that they could take advantage of of that situation unless Michigan's just able to line up and run the ball down their throat.
Yeah,
Which, with their physical mindset and their backs, will be something they'll try and do.
Yeah, Higdon is the top running back for Michigan. He's really broken out in the second half of the season. And if they are, and that's how they've been able to have success with Peters in the second half of the season, it's being able to run the football and not ask him to do too much. Because you're right, he hasn't been in a lot of situations where he's had to throw the ball a lot and been under a lot of pressure. The one game he was under pressure was the Wisconsin road game that he got hurt, which they were still in the game until he got hurt. By the way, is Samuel going to come back next year to South Carolina? Has he made any announcements?
Yes,
he is.
Yes, he said he will be back. Yes.
Excellent. That's good.
There's always a chance they'll change their mind, but he has said publicly he will be back. Now, Hayden Hurst has announced he is leaving for the draft.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look forward to definitely talking to you about Clemson and South Carolina pro talent as we get closer to the draft. That's for sure. But we also look forward to after Clemson beats Alabama. We look forward to talking to you. I don't want to keep jinxing you with that, but I'll put my money where my mouth is, and my mouth where my money is, and we'll talk about that next week, and maybe I'll get a chance to also hopefully maybe I could hook up with I know your partner's in New Orleans. Maybe I could hook up with him after the game. If all goes well and they're able to win the game, maybe there's a chance that I could talk to your on-air partner and see, because obviously he'll be there live, and that must be. Now, were you with him? Was he? How do you decide who goes to these events?
Well, Will's in his first year with us, so he wanted to go to New Orleans. I said that's fine. I've been through the playoff setting and the championship setting, so it's anything I crave. To the point where it's me or no one. So he wanted to go there. I said, go right ahead. I'll take my 80 degrees in Tampa, and you take your 40 degrees in New Orleans, and have a good time.
There you go. I like that one. And then you could always go to the championship next week, right?
That's right. Yeah, we'll both go. I'll go early. Should Clemson make it, I'll go in the time. We always like to get there when the team arrives so we can begin our coverage right with them. So I've been here since the Gamecocks got here on Monday, and he's been in New Orleans since Tuesday. Gamecocks arrived Tuesday. Clemson arrived in New Orleans on Wednesday, so Will's been with them, and it kind of it puts us in step with them from the moment they get to their location, which I like to do with our show.
All right, Phil. Best of luck. Enjoy the Clemson game, of course, and obviously now what time is that? That's the early game, so that's good. So you don't have to worry. The game, you'll be able to come home after that, or go to the hotel after that.
It's a big day. It's a big day in South Carolina for football.
That's right.
You watch the Gamecocks at noon. That game will wrap up 3:30 or so, and then you can go and have some dinner and
sit back,
watch Georgia and Oklahoma, and then you'll have the Clemson game, the last game of the day. So it's a full day of interesting football in our state.
Southeastern too. With that South Carolina, Georgia, Clemson trifecta. There you go.
Absolutely.
Phil, I appreciate it. Great job as always. Enjoy the game, and we look forward, if all things go well with the team, talking to you next week.
You got it, my friend. Anytime.
All right. Thanks a lot. That's Phil Kornblut. And again, Phil with Sports Talk Radio at sportstalksc.com. So that is going to wrap it up here for our OFN meeting room as we again talk Clemson Tigers football. So, matter of fact, that's it for our coverage this week. But check out ourlads.com because we have a bunch of on-demand shows and interviews from earlier this week and all sorts of bowl games and also the NFL. We'll talk to you next week, though, for sure. We'll have more playoff talk, championship talk. So check back with us next week here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network at ourlads.com, where it's never too early to think about the NFL Draft.